but every little now and then it creeps on back to shade my smile.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever the case may be. For all of you listening out there across the crazy planet Earth, welcome to a brand new edition of Vestiges After Dark. And I am your host, Bishop Brian Willett, coming to you live from the deep woods of Western Georgia on this November 8th, 2022. Tonight we're talking about a subject that we have never covered on this show before. The subject is Bigfoot, and we have a fantastic guest to discuss this subject with you tonight, Mike Familant. He'll be with us, I believe, for the next 3 hours, 2 or 3 hours, to discuss what this phenomenon is. What are cryptids? What has he discovered out there in the field? And we'll be taking your questions too. So you don't want to miss this one. Don't go away. Well, hello, everyone. I hope you are all having a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening. I know we have people listening in and tuning in from all over the world, so I try to cover the gamut of time zones in each of my introductions. Sorry for being redundant, but I mean, it's kind of a, I want to make sure that you're being recognized for tuning into this fantastic show, and we're so appreciative that you do, because it is always so interesting when we have live audience participation, and I know this is a subject we've never covered before today. So I know a lot of you excited about it, and it should be interesting to say the least. Before we get started, though, we have Jamie Wolf here, and she's got her new glasses. I hope you like them.
I was dared to put them on for just a few minutes, so don't ever dare me, because I'll call you on it.
Yeah, I mean, those are fantastic. I mean, do you see better with them? Or?
No, I can't see. I can't see shit. I'm about to take these off, but let it be known that I will take a dare.
Well, there you go. There you go. Well, what's our libation for this evening?
So today we have Jefferson's Ocean Rye. Bishop knows that I am a rye girl of bourbon, and this one is a double barrel pot whiskey. These bottles are taken out to the ocean, or the barrels, I should say, and they are subjected to temperature fluctuations, weather, and they're out to sea for quite a while, and so they're aged by the ocean, and so it the tannins will pull from the barrel from the heat, and then the cold, and then the weather. I get this particular batch was caught in a hurricane.
Oh.
And so the flavor profile is divine. It's really, you're going to taste the spice.
Well, I know that there's a cognac that they send around the world on a boat.
That's basically what these guys are doing.
Yeah. And it does have an effect on the flavor of the whiskey.
This is one of the better ryes I've had. So if you don't like it, I'm actually going to be shocked.
No, I like rye, so
I know you do.
I doubt I will dislike it.
So, Slange.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's the ticket.
It has a little bit of a hurricane taste in there.
It's got
the
spice, the ocean. I even smell apple.
Have you ever lived through a hurricane? Have you ever been through one?
No. Okay. I'm a Illinois girl.
I grew up in Florida, so we had them pretty much all the time. And there is a smell in the atmosphere that sort of comes out.
Now I know
during
that pre-storm smell you're talking about. I have been in Florida prior to a hurricane hitting,
Yes, it's a special, distinctive kind of smell.
There's the same smell when a tornado's in nearby.
Yeah, and
ozone.
and this is something that I think it's reminiscent of that. So I find it interesting. This is very good. No,
That's
thank
a good
you.
rye. That's a good rye.
Yeah, I like rye. I mean, rye makes a fantastic Manhattan, and I love Manhattan. So there you go. Okay, so before we get started tonight with today's guest and fantastic subject of Bigfoot, I'd like to take questions and comments from the ether, and the one that we have today is surprise from Brandon. I think he's out there in the chat room right now. So,
he is.
Brandon, you already know the answer to this because I've already answered it, but this is something that I thought, since it's something that's big enough, I try to pick questions that the whole world would respond to, or questions that are common enough that anyone would want to know the answer to it. This one I felt that you asked, it was yesterday, is relevant. So let's see where it goes. So Brandon asked on the Nicolayan Network yesterday, many biblical scholars of my area are talking about how in the book of Revelation, all of these other countries are mentioned, but America. They're using this to point out that America is going to fall under a leadership that they disagree with, or something to that effect. So what would be the true reason as to why America is not mentioned in Revelation, or is it just not mentioned by name? And if it is not mentioned, would we know the reason as to why, or would we only be guessing? I know you've said in the past to look through it from a historical context. So would the ancients be aware of the continent of North America? Because America was not found until several hundred years later, so they wouldn't have the knowledge of something that did not exist at the time, right? Yeah, I know what he's talking about because I've dealt with evangelical churches that sort of teach this end times prophecy nonsense about the book of Revelation. And so I'm going to read my answer, and then I'm going to just go into a little bit more detail about it. Then we'll get started with tonight's show. So this is how I answered. The answer is simple. The book of Revelation is a book discussing in code, a code the early Christians would have understood the meaning of, the current political situation of their time.
Right.
Anything prophetic about it was merely detailing contemporary events to the first century Christians without the Romans knowing they were talking about them. This was to avoid any further persecution. The only aspects of the book of Revelation relevant to our time today are those elements affirming that Christ will eventually return someday in the future. We already knew this because he told us this before the crucifixion. And when he does, the old heaven and the old earth will pass away, being replaced entirely with a new heaven and a new earth, which we also already knew because this is the logical implication of salvation itself. The point here, and I think this is the important thing, is that Revelation was never written to be a book of prophecy about our immediate future. It was about their time and the events that they were dealing with, which was very perilous, by the way. If you were a first century Christian, your life was at risk, okay? This was before Christianity had been normalized, hundreds of years before Christianity had been normalized. Think about it. The first, the first several popes, I don't know the exact number of popes, but the first several popes were all martyred, okay? All of the apostles except for John were martyred. And this is this gives us some idea as to how pervasive the persecutions are. Now, I know that there's a lot of there's a lot of historians, so-called historians out there that are trying to say that Christian persecution wasn't anywhere near as bad as the church claims it was. But I think when you look at the church documents, which are a lot more complete than the rest of the history, because, I mean, understand this. This is what the church did for like the first 1,500 years. All it did was record stuff, okay? It was predominantly a system for maintaining history. Okay, the monasteries during the Dark Ages. The only reason we even know what the Roman Empire was is because of the monasteries from the Dark Ages. They kept the knowledge alive. All of that would have been lost. All right, the barbaric invasions would have completely wiped them out. But they were smart and they preserved this. And well, the Crusades didn't hurt either because that kept a lot of these invasions at bay. more of the history would have been lost if we wouldn't have had those. So, it's a different time and everything else. But the fact of the matter is, Revelation was written for the first century Christian. All right. The mark of the beast, 666 and all this stuff, which is actually the original number was 616, by the way. Hate to disappoint you Satanists out there, but 666 was not the mark of the beast.
In the earliest documents.
I know, right? The earliest documents, okay, of the book of Revelation, it's 616. It was 666 was a scribal error, but it's likely that this was a code for talking about Caesar Nero, which was one of the emperors, Roman emperors, that absolutely hated Christians.
He was a nasty bugger.
Very much so. And so the beast was, of course, him. Naturally, he's the one causing all this Christian death and persecution. It was never about the end of the world in terms of how we see the end times with people that preach this tribulation and rapture and all this nonsense, which is all nonsense, by the way, completely. The fact of the matter is there's only one part of the book of Revelation that is relevant to our time, and that is that we know from the teaching of Jesus directly that he will return. If we have faith in him, we know this to be true, and that when he returns, it will be the final, it'll be at the end of time when there's no more need for the church. And the entirety of Christian salvation will have come to fruition. All right. But that is not going to happen. All right. That's not going to happen until there's nobody left to save. All right. So as long as there's one person that is still worthy of salvation, God's going to keep the world going. This is why the apostles themselves thought that there was going to be well, how do I say this? That they thought Jesus was coming back in their lifetime, all right? And subsequent generations of Christians thought he was coming back in their lifetime. And when the year 1000 came along, everyone thought this was like the end of the world. It was like, this is it. It's 1,000 years. He's coming back. And he did not. 2,000 years later, we're still here. And guess what? 10,000 years later, we'll probably still be here in some capacity, as long as there's at least one person worth saving, because that's the mercy of God. Okay. It's actually, I would say, antithetical to soteriology, to the entirety of soteriological theology, to say that we're in the end times and, Donald Trump or Joe Biden is the Antichrist and this is it. All right. No, they wouldn't have been talking about America. America's not relevant to all this. And I guess in a sense it's true. Yeah. I don't think America will be here when Jesus comes back, because Jesus probably won't be back for at least another 1,000 years, if not more. And I don't think America will be around in 1,000 years. Empires fall. Rome thought it'd be around here a long time. I don't think America has the endurance of Rome. And even Rome couldn't last for more than a few thousand years. So the fact of the matter is, it's pointless to try to take scripture and use it as a horoscope, trying to make some kind of fortune telling out of it by taking these vague symbols and seeing meaning in it. I mean, it's basically a type of pareidolia. Okay, so no, the book of Revelation is not a prophecy for our time. It's a prophecy of the Christian story. Okay, and this was to give comfort to those who are suffering great persecution, to say, you know what, don't worry about it. I know the Romans are trying to kill us, but Jesus will take care of us. Jesus will be back, and we'll be with him someday. And that's the hope and faith of the Christian people. And that's all the Revelation was ever meant to say. That's all it was trying to tell the Christians of the time. And they knew it. They would probably be appalled if they saw that we have completely twisted and turned the meaning of Revelation around to being some kind of, prophetic book, and say, oh, we got to find America in there somewhere. And I know, Donald Trump's got to be the Antichrist. He's got to be, I mean, it's
wasn't
ridiculous.
Nero the emperor that blamed the fire on the Christians?
Yes. Yes, it was.
Right.
And the fact is,
they're being slaughtered in the streets.
They were,
because they were blamed by Nero for the fire that took out the city.
It was, and I mean, there was a lot of reasons for the persecution,
right.
But
So
understand that
openly.
It was a tumultuous time, and yes, you couldn't talk openly, and you could use apocalyptic language because that was the language a lot of these Jewish Christians spoke. because they were familiar with it, they could talk in code and they could speak about it. But no, there is no this. Just because it looks like it's the end of the world out there politically does not mean that it's the end of time and Jesus is coming back tomorrow. Okay, in fact, it is the safest the world's the safest it's ever been. I know a lot of you don't want to accept that.
The problem is social media. Nothing is hidden anymore. No, everything's
exactly.
out there. So
including all of the delusions of everybody else.
Right.
So those delusions are now feeding into an egregore that kind of permeates the entirety of human civilization. So, so Brandon says here, so the beast was never referencing the devil, but Nero? Correct. Yeah. 666.
Literally. Or
616, the original number was referencing Nero as a code for Nero. It had nothing to do with some kind of. Remember, every time Antichrist is used in the almost every time Antichrist is used in the New Testament, it's always used in the plural sense. There are multiple antichrists. Anytime you do anything that's against the teaching of Jesus, you are now an antichrist. All right, guarantee. Every time you sin, you participate in being an antichrist. I hate to say it, but it's the truth. All right, anything against Christ is the antichrist. All right, it's not this fun specific person who's going to show up and he's going to woo everybody by his charm and lead us down the dark path of damnation.
Makes for a great book and film series.
Oh yeah, well, particularly if you're that guy from Growing Pains. What was his name? What was his name? Kirk Cameron. Thank you. Yeah, Kirk Cameron. If you're Kirk Cameron, then yeah, you're going to believe this stuff. If you're Bishop Brian, you're going to call bullshit when you see it. And I just called bullshit on this one. So yeah, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. Okay. The Book of Revelation was never about any of that stuff. All right. Never about any of that stuff. Never supposed to be any of that stuff. All right, let's get started here with tonight's show because we've got a great one, and I am so happy to bring this to everybody's attention because we've never talked about Bigfoot. All these things we've talked about cryptids before, cryptozoology. We've covered it in sort of a generic sense, but I've never had someone on that actually has made this a part of their work. It's becoming a career for our guest tonight, actually. And our guest is Mike Familant. He's a 33-year-old EMT, firefighter, and graphic designer, and a full-time Bigfoot researcher, producer, and lead investigator from Northwest New Jersey. He first got into Bigfooting in 2011 on an expedition in North Florida, where him and a friend experienced rocks being thrown at them while sitting around a campfire. Since then, he has made it his personal goal to find out exactly what is roaming the woods of America. In 2016, after being frustrated with the lack of true research expedition shows on TV, he created his own show called In the Shadow of Big Red Eye. The show is currently filming their 5th season. In 2018, Mike also created a docuseries called Squatchables. What a word, Squatchables, which was created for people who are just getting into Bigfooting, sort of a Bigfooting 101. With a passion for Bigfooting and a history in video editing, Mike decided to make the first real show about what expeditions are truly about. You'll see raw, uncut footage of what Bigfooting actually is. If there's one thing Mike hopes people gain from this show, it's for families and friends to get off the couch and outside into nature to explore what this amazing world has to offer. All of Mike's episodes and more can be found on his YouTube channel, Sussex County Bigfoot. In the Shadow of Big Red Eye is also on Facebook under the same name and Instagram at Shadow of Red Eye. All one word, at Shadow of Red Eye. That will get you connected to all of Mike's work. And so let's welcome Mike to the show. How you doing tonight, Mike?
Hey, Mike.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks for coming on. We're really excited to have you. We also have Father Chris with us. I think he's going to be in and out tonight. I don't know. Father, how's your schedule tonight?
Good evening, everybody. Well, it's lunchtime here, but
yeah, you're in Australia, so yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I'll have to leave. I've got a funeral in 1 hour.
Okay.
A funeral to conduct, so I'll be leaving in about 35 minutes, but then I'll come back
okay.
As quickly as I can afterwards. So it's a 100-year-old. So this is my my second centurion I've buried in 2 weeks. So
Oh, my.
a good long life.
But hey,
Full
I can never get sad when I hear that kind of news, because if you've lived to 100, I mean, you got your money's worth,
And good people of faith too.
Yeah.
So,
well, there you go.
know.
That's fantastic. Okay. So nothing wrong with that. Nothing
We'll
wrong
celebrate.
with that. So usually, Mike, how we do this show is that for the first hour, we just kind of let you talk, and we do this organically. I don't come up with a script, and I don't come up with a whole bunch of questions. I just like conversation. And that's what we do for the first hour. Typically, is just converse, and you can tell us what you want us to know about your work. In the second hour, then we start getting into questions from the audience. And if you want to stay for the third, we just continue on with just whatever comes our way from that point forward. So it's up to you. But anyway, let's get started with finding out. Like in your bio, you said that you were walking through the woods and some stones were thrown at you, and this is kind of what got you started. So I think we need to start there. What was the specifics of what really happened in getting you involved in the study of Bigfoot?
Yeah, we'll start at the beginning for sure.
Yeah.
So I was actually on a BFRO expedition, which is a Bigfoot research organization expedition that they took a bunch of people out in the middle of the woods, and we tried to get Bigfoot activity. We were out there for like 4 days, 3 nights. And it was really cool. There was like 60 other people there, which is kind of crazy. Like, you think 60 people walking through the woods trying to find Bigfoot, that seems kind of counterproductive, but
Right. Noise.
Yeah, it is a little noisy,
Talk
right?
about noise
but
contamination.
yeah, you're not going to sneak up on one of them like that.
Right.
So anyways, nothing happened. Like, we did some really cool hiking and we met some witnesses and stuff, but nothing happened in the way of Bigfoot at all until it was the last night. And me and my friend Jimmy, we were up watching a meteor shower. And this is in North Florida, and about 30 miles from Georgia, about 60 miles from the Gulf of Mexico in the Panhandle of Florida.
Okay.
So
Not too far from me.
Yeah. So it was the final night. This is in Torreya State Park, final night. And like I said, we were watching a meteor shower, and we hear this tree knock that comes from one direction of camp. And that's something that a Bigfoot is supposedly known to do, is knock on trees to be able to communicate with each other.
Right.
So I initially thought that it was the people that put on the expedition, because I paid a lot of money
Messing
to go
with
out
you.
on this thing.
Right.
So I was like, okay, we didn't get any legitimate Bigfoot activity, so this is how they get 60 people to come back every time. Right. They dinner and a show type thing.
Yeah.
And then about 5 minutes later, we hear another tree knock from the complete opposite direction. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, these people are pretty good.
Yeah.
They're into this, and then nothing happened. About 15 minutes later, and we hear it come crashing through the trees. It was a pine forest we were camping in, and it was a fist-sized rock just came crashing down and landed like 10 feet from us. And I was like, nope, this is how horror movies start.
Yep.
And my buddy's like,
Hopefully nobody was wearing a red shirt.
My buddy's like, if you want to go sleep in the car, you're more than welcome to. And by the time he finished that sentence, I had all my gear and I was just beelining it right to the car.
I bet, yeah.
But he talked some sense into me, and he was like, Mike, this is what Bigfoot do. They also throw rocks. So this could be some legit Bigfoot activity we're having.
Right.
And I was like, fine. So he talked me back out of the car. And over the course of the next 15 minutes, 4 more of these fist-sized rocks landed like within 10, 15 feet from us.
Oh my.
So I'm freaking out. This is my first night ever in the woods. Like, I've never been camping prior to this.
Yeah.
So
That's a heck of an initiation.
Yeah. Initiation into the woods type of thing. So then my friend Jimmy, he's like, I'm going to throw a rock back at it. And I said, I don't think that's a good idea.
That's daring, yeah.
Jimmy, you're on your own, bro.
So he threw a rock back at it, and I knew it wasn't a person at that exact second, because a laptop-sized boulder came crashing down and landed like 5 feet from us.
Oh, wow.
So it was at that exact moment where I realized there's probably something a little bit more to this whole Bigfoot thing than I give credit to. And then it just kind of kind of lit a fire under me, and I was like, man, I got to figure out what is behind all this stuff. And here we are, how many years later, 10 years later, and talking to you guys.
So you have some filmmaking experience here, and that's what you kind of decided to integrate some of that into this interest, in the sense that you weren't satisfied with what you were seeing on TV, and you wanted to give, I guess, a more complete, authentic, I guess, appearance. So, I mean, what you wanted to present something more authentic to the audience out there. Is that would that be fair to say?
Yeah, my whole thing is, like I said before, I was never growing up. I was always inside. I was playing video games and stuff. So the whole reason why I made the show is to get friends and families off the couch and outside and into nature. I think that's super important. And I think especially today, everybody is way too connected, especially young kids and stuff with the cell phones and whatnot. And I think it's extremely important to promote that and to promote the outdoors and stuff like that. So in every episode, that's kind of like an underlying theme that I have, is to promote this outdoor-iness, I guess, if you will.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I just recently moved from the northern part of, way north of the metro area to way southwest of the metro area of Atlanta. And I'm now in the middle of the woods here, and we have about 18, 19 acres.
Nice.
So it's nice. Yes. And I mean, there's some interesting experiences that can be had out there. I'm not saying I've encountered a Bigfoot, and it's probably a little bit too urban even here, because we're surrounded by, metropolitan areas, and this is sort of like a little sanctuary, not too far from an actual wildlife sanctuary and everything else. So it's really nice. We see a lot of different wildlife out here, and it's quiet, and yes, I understand getting back to nature and how important that is. So, when it comes to Bigfoot, I think one of the big questions people have is whether or not we're dealing with some kind of physical creature, or is it perhaps something that is an egregore, perhaps some kind of archetypal form that's taking shape in the form of a thought form, or is it some kind of interdimensional creature? Because the one thing that you'll find critics complaining about is, no one has definitively captured one. So there's no way that a biologist or, a group of scientists could come in and definitively say, okay, this is what we've been seeing all these years, and I guess the Yeti, I mean, is it Nettie? The
Yeti?
The Yeti. I'm sorry, Yeti. Thank you. The Yeti is kind of like the Arctic counterpart.
Snowman.
Yes, like in the mountains where it's cold. It's kind of the same sort of
the Himalayas.
The Himalayas is where you see that. Same kind of general myth. So what do you think it is? I mean, do you think it is something that is supernatural, or do you think it's just basically something that's very elusive and quite natural?
Yeah, I think it's a biological creature. I think it's just like a chipmunk or a eagle or a bear or something like that. And I think that they've been able to elude detection for so long is because you have you put a level of intelligence on top of that. And once you have some intelligence with an animal, and then you have the limited numbers of Bigfoot that are out there, it's would make it extremely possible that Bigfoot could survive and remain undetected in North America.
Yeah, I'll think about it. You know your house,
Yeah,
like more than anybody else.
Right.
So if someone comes into your house, they're not going to know where you might have a good hidey hole. But they've got all the woods, real thick, dense woods. They know those woods like the back of their hands. So they know where to hide. They know they have perches. They have overwatch positions.
Well, there's new species that are discovered every year.
Like they compare this one to Gigantopithecus.
Yeah.
That he could be related to.
And I think that's the thing that is sort of unusual here, is that you're dealing with something that is quite large and seemingly intelligent, more intelligent than just an average animal. Something that might be more on par with us, or maybe a whale or a dolphin or something. So it is interesting that all these years into the, modern era with all our technology, we haven't been able to, capture one. And so that's
going to be the cloaking technology. That
the cloaking. So do you think they have some technology? But I mean,
I've heard it all.
It is interesting because, and the reason I bring it up is not that I don't believe. I don't disbelieve in them. I'm not. I just don't know what they are.
Bigfoot was my first cryptid.
Is it? Well, I think it is for most, but I mean, it's really kind of an interesting, fascinating thing. And I mean, I guess I don't spend enough time out there in the actual wilderness outside of my property that I would encounter the things that you're talking about. But I will say this: when I grew up, I was always out in the woods. I never spent any time inside. I hated being inside. I was always outside, always covered in ticks and dirt and rashes and mosquito bites and everything else because
so you were a boy.
I was. Yeah. I was. I mean, I was a filthy boy, out there just I'm surprised, I didn't come up with some disease. So I would just be like trekking through the swamps and everything else. So but I will say this, I never met a Bigfoot, but I did encounter very unusual things out there in the woods, things that I can't explain, encounters with things that seem like ethereal creatures, or maybe things that are part of the mythos that has been handed on to us today. So I'm wondering just about this creature, because you're saying it, you think it's an actual biological creature, which is fascinating to me. That not only, would it be something that tangible, but also that it would be so intelligent that it could elude us. Because I mean, think about the FBI and the CIA. You commit a crime, I mean, they're knocking at your door like tomorrow. I mean, you got to be really, really clever of a criminal to kind of get away from our technology today. Because is it because people just aren't looking, they don't believe enough, and they're not trying hard enough, or do you really think they're just that bright and that clever that they can always elude human beings?
Yeah, and I think it comes down to more of a numbers thing too. I think you got to be in the right place at the right time to find a Bigfoot.
Yeah.
For example, in New Jersey, I do a lot of research out of New Jersey, and I think there's like 9 individuals that live in the state of New Jersey. So 9 individual Bigfoot, that is.
Okay.
So if you take even New Jersey's not that big, but you take that, just 9 people and throw them throughout the state, you're never going to find those 9 people, no matter how hard you look. You can have the most advanced capabilities of whatever, thermal drones, airplanes, whatever. You're never going to find those 9 people. So
do you think that they're so small in number that they're like an endangered species?
Yeah, I think when we do classify these species, and unfortunately, like you said, we're going to need to have a body to be able to classify one of these things. Yeah. I do want to say straight off the bat, though, I'm not a hunter.
You're not trying to kill one.
No, and there's people that are. There's people that are out there to do that, and they want to get the fame and the riches and stuff from doing that, and that's cool. If you want to do that, it's just not my thing.
Yeah.
I know one of the theories is that they don't. Why haven't we ever found a dead body out there? Well, number one is out there, and especially in the Northwest, things break down very quickly with all the moisture. Right. Also, there's a theory that they bury their dead. They take care of their dead, kind of like we do.
Well, and it's also kind of interesting that I think sometimes all of these fake reports haven't helped.
It doesn't help.
Because you have these people that claim they have it, and then they bring in these apparent remains. We had one here in
Metro Atlanta several years ago. He was actually a police officer that worked with Mike
Which
County.
is really strange to me. Why are they doing this?
He said he was a dumbass.
Just a dumbass. I mean, but he claimed he had the remains, and it was what, a deer or something?
No, it was a gorilla suit. The one here in Atlanta, it was a gorilla suit
Halloween
in a block of ice.
On a block of ice.
Right.
Oh, so it wasn't even real flesh.
Money.
Yeah. That boy was a mess.
Wow.
I knew him from being a police officer in the same county.
Oh, you actually knew him?
Oh yeah, he was a goofball. He was a goofball.
So why do you think, knowing him, what do you think he was doing this for?
Notoriety.
Really?
Yeah, notoriety.
But didn't he think that?
I don't think he thought that far ahead that scientists were actually going to thaw the ice out and
see that it wasn't real.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a level of stupidity I can't fathom.
I think he was trying to get as much money as he could before the game.
Wow, because I mean that obviously doesn't help the case.
He was one of those guys that liked to have a lot of attention. He liked to be the center of attention. Wow. So I don't know if he thought it out real well, but anyway,
he clearly did.
We know about the fakers.
So, Father Chris, you grew up in the UK. You live in Australia. Do they have these Bigfoot myths in the same capacity out in those locations?
No, my knowledge of Bigfoot was all from America.
So it's basically a North American thing for Bigfoot, and then
what we have in England is
Sasquatch.
we have big cat sightings.
Right.
So now they've actually been verified in large part. It's likely that a lot of these big cats, sort of escaped captivity or escaped from circuses, zoos, or what have you. So, but they were doubted for a long time. They were pretty much in the same category as Sasquatch when I was a kid. But we now know, because of drones and other technology, that they are real. And they do take sheep on Dartmoor and all the rest of it. So there is hope for you in terms of getting some evidence. I was also thinking of that. There was the fossil fish that was, 420 million year old fish that was thought to be long extinct, which was then caught off South Africa.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
So there's all sorts of examples throughout the world of.
Well, you guys have Loch Ness. I mean, so
absolutely, yeah. We had Nessie. That's true.
Nessie.
So Nessie's the big one for us in the UK,
right?
And you could be cynical and say, well, there's the tourist trade to a part of the world where perhaps
it's a plesiosaur. That's all. It's just a plesiosaur.
Well, it is very deep. Yeah. I mean, Loch Ness goes very deep, doesn't it? I mean, like unthinkably
but
deep.
We know the fact that there are, long thought to be extinct animals that actually aren't extinct.
Right.
So, they just, don't live near us, or they're not in numbers that we can see. So, so that's my real. But I've been fascinated by Sasquatch and by the Yeti. The Yeti was probably a more common sort of thing to talk about in the UK, maybe because of the history.
Well, it's your side. It's that side of the world. I mean,
yeah. So the Himalayas used to be kind of British territory. So.
Yeah, exactly. So Mike,
all of that too.
The Yeti, the Yeti. Do you think it's the same thing as Bigfoot, or do you think it's different from a Sasquatch?
Yeah, no, I think they're like cousins. What's super interesting is every continent besides Antarctica has a story of this Bigfoot type creature. In Australia, it's the Yowie. Sumatra, it's the orang pendek. You have the Himalayas, which is the Yeti. And then in North America, you have the Sasquatch or Bigfoot. But they're all relatively the same descriptions. So just like humans, I think we differ in appearance, obviously. I think it would make sense that a Bigfoot would differ in appearance as well.
Yeah, that way it would be logical to assume that.
Yeah, and even in the States, there's variations. You've got like the swamp ape, and it depending on the geographical area, but they all have very similar behaviors.
Right.
So,
and what are those behaviors? Like, what are the things that are distinctive about them that you have been able to ascertain, Mike? Like, what have you been able to collect in your research that pinpoints that this is a hot spot, or one particular location is a hot spot for Sasquatch activity?
It really depends. A lot of people ask me, like, how do I pick a location of where I go look for Bigfoot, right? And a lot of people think it's because of a history of sightings, or there was a recent sighting or something like that, which is all really cool stuff, and something that I look into. But honestly, I go when I go out and pick these location expeditions, I go online to Verizon's website. It's my cell phone carrier, and I see where I don't have service, and I go there, because I don't like people bother me when I'm on these expeditions and other.
That's what I should have done when I got my property. Pretty close though.
I think we're losing. Okay, we're back here. It looks like we had a little bit of a stability problem with Zoom, but it's back now. No problems on the stream, so at least we're having no issues there. But you're still with us, Mike and Father Chris?
Sorry, audio for a second.
Yeah.
Back now.
Okay.
Yeah. We're here.
Okay. It looked like it was choppy there for a second. So that's interesting. Okay. So what would you say in North America would be the hottest location for, like where do they seem to be in the largest number?
Definitely the Pacific Northwest. I've never been out there, but the Cascade Mountains in Washington State, Oregon, Northern California, even really good habitat and a lot of very, very numerous and good sightings from out that way.
And when there are sightings, what are people reporting? Like, are they seeing them come up to their campsites and interacting with them, or they just like notice them at a distance and then they run off?
Yeah, the most common sighting is a road crossing sighting. So when someone's driving down the road and you turn a corner and you catch a Sasquatch kind of crossing the road, and you get this fleeting kind of glimpse of them. That's the most reported sighting, followed closely by hunters in the woods that have vocalizations and unknown sounds and stuff like that, and followed by footprints and stuff like that, actual physical evidence that's found.
And they're large, right? I mean, what would be like the average height of a Sasquatch?
I think for like a female, it'd be like 7 foot. Wow. And for a male, it'd be like 8 feet tall.
Interesting. So, yeah. I mean,
and kind of just like we said before, like with the skunk ape in Florida, they're a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
So it is geographically makes sense of where they are in the country, of kind of how they look and even how they behave. For example, in Ohio, the grassman is their Bigfoot, and that's known to be a little bit more aggressive than the Bigfoot elsewhere in the country. So that's interesting as well.
Yeah, that is interesting, because I mean, I imagine they'd be quite strong, like an orangutan, maybe. Something that's a powerful primate type of creature.
Yeah, I'd say super strong gorilla.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, like I mean, I wouldn't want to get into a fight with one from the sound of it.
No.
Yeah. There's been no reported Bigfoot attacks on anybody. Yeah. However, I mean, that's not to say that if you were to get attacked by a Bigfoot, you'd be able to report said attack.
Well, I find it interesting too, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you know, Mike, these rocks being tossed is a very common phenomenon, but I haven't heard of anyone actually being hit.
Correct. Yeah. No, it's always
it's kind of a warning.
It's always very close. I think it is definitely a warning saying, hey, get out of the area. What was interesting in Florida, like I said, we were camping with these 60 people, but we thought everybody was weird. So we set up camp a little bit outside of everybody, away from everybody. And we're the only people that got activity on that trip. So I think that was because we were just a little bit closer to their family group or wherever they were staying that night that we got those rocks thrown at us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that the most like bizarre experience you had out there? Or have you had other ones that left you unsettled?
Oh yeah. I was up in Whitehall, New York, which is a very extremely great area to go look for Bigfoot. It's up by Fairhaven, Vermont, and that Lake George area.
Yeah.
And it's extremely beautiful, but it's great for Bigfooting. And we were surrounded up there, and there were Bigfoot throwing rocks at us and hitting trees next to us. That's how good their aim is. I think they were actually hitting the trees next to us and not us.
Yeah.
They were breaking branches. You could hear their footfalls, and you could even hear them like grunting a little bit. And it's all on audio recording on that Whitehall episode. Right. But I think the weirdest thing that I've ever and the most scared I've been is I was walking this area that I always go to. It's like my backyard, and I've been there. I could do it daytime, nighttime, eyes closed, backwards, forwards, no problems doing it solo, day, night, whatever. Yeah. And I was hiking it one night, and just like normal, I got about a mile into the woods, and then it was like an invisible brick wall, and I hit it, and I was like, something told me that I could not go any further. Now I'm comfortable in the woods, and I actually had to call my ride because it was a one-way hike. I had to call my ride to come back and pick me up because I couldn't finish that hike that night. So I don't know what that was, but that was very strange and unsettling.
I mean, that means that's
I've
where you're
heard that
starting to
before,
cross
yeah.
into like the realm of the paranormal now, because it's like, what on earth could they have access to that would be able to produce that experience that you just described?
It's actually could referred to as infrasound. Large primates can do it, and tigers do it, and stuff like that. It's actually a low pitched frequency that they say a Bigfoot can emit that will give you kind of unsettling feelings and stuff like that. It's very interesting. It's an elephant's system.
Well, I was going to say, the elephants have this very low frequency communication, And like you say, it does interact with human beings, because certainly zookeepers that keep elephants, that occasionally they have to sleep with them because they're ill, or the vets or what have you, and it makes humans feel sick. That low frequency of communication actually interacts with our physiology.
Yeah, we're higher frequency beings.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I hadn't heard that.
Oh, that it? I haven't I've not heard that. But I mean, I've known that Sasquatch, and again, like I said, this is kind of a uncharted territory for me talking about this. This is not something that I typically get into in my work in the paranormal. Most of what I do is involving ghosts and demons and things of that nature. Sasquatch, not so much. Occasionally, we get into aliens, and various metaphysical creatures like elementals and whatnot. And sometimes we've speculated whether or not these things are like an elemental because of their being so elusive and hard to fathom that something so large could be, so well hidden and never have come in contact with someone that could capture it in some way, particularly when you have people that are out there looking, so right. It's always made us wonder that, are we dealing with something interdimensional? Are we dealing with a thought form? It's interesting, but I think you, Mike, have the most common opinion out there right now that I've seen is that it is an actual species that just hasn't been identified yet.
And I'm open to the possibility of anything.
Yeah.
I'm not closed-minded where I say, and the reason why I say it's biological, and the reason why I think that is because of the evidence that I've found supports that, the trackways and stuff that we found and stuff like that. I've always said to anybody, if you can produce me some evidence that's actual evidence of a different philosophy, then I would be more than happy to take a look at it. And I would challenge anybody to please try to change my opinion of it.
Yeah, sure. No, I mean, I think that's the best approach to have with everything, is to be open-minded enough to not let your own paradigm dictate the course of your research. I mean, I think the real goal of any researcher should be the pursuit of knowledge, whatever it is, even if it means they get proven wrong in the end. So that's admirable that you approach this subject that way, because I think that is a sincere approach. It's an approach of integrity that I respect. I'm kind of the same way with a lot of the things that I deal with, the unknowns that I deal with. And I try to keep an open mind. I try not to let my religious perspective influence my the empirical research that comes my way, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So when it comes to this thing, I mean, you're talking about physical evidence. Have you ever come in contact with remains or fur or hair samples or something? Yeah.
Have you cast any prints?
Yeah, other than the prints, I guess, which I know that there's plenty of that out there. But I mean, has anyone ever caught tissue samples or something like that? Bones?
Yeah, I have. I don't have it with me in front of me, but I have a hair sample that came from northern Michigan, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and this is only hearsay. I don't have the documentation for it because it wasn't my sample.
Right.
But it did come back as unknown primate, 99.8% human, but unknown primate. So again, that's hearsay. I don't have it. I didn't come firsthand from me, so I can't say that that's the truth or not. But that has been replicated and tested multiple times throughout the country. That as DNA has come back.
And there's been other samples too. I know. I'm sure you know who Jeff Meldrum is. They've had samples come in that were basically classified the same way, primate but unknown.
Primate but unknown.
And he's known for his collection of the prints. I mean, some of the prints are fascinating because you can see the ridge lines on the feet, the toes, the depressions.
And we're talking very large.
Very hard to fake. Yeah, very hard to fake.
I mean, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
It fascinating, and I hate mysteries. I think that's the part of me that I just can't stand.
Oh, I love a good mystery. I just want to solve it.
Well, but that's it. It's I love a good mystery, but I want to be able to have the tools to solve it. I don't like mysteries that are ongoing. I don't even like watching crime shows where it's this has been an unsolved crime for 20 years. I usually just
critique the way the police handle it because I'm no, that's not what we would do.
Well, then don't watch the new season of Unsolved Mysteries because it's all a bunch of shoddy police work.
Lord.
It really is. It's pretty bad. But yeah, let's talk about that, I guess, in terms of finding one. I mean, do you think that part of the problem is that it's only amateur researchers that are just interested in this? I mean, why haven't we created a professional organization that serves the purpose of going out there and finding this thing, and I mean, it seems like that's what needs to happen. Like, bring in the best technology. I mean, we got trail cams today. It's like I was talking a few weeks ago to my audience here. We had some poachers on my property, and they were coming in the middle of the night and setting up tree stands to hunt deer on the property. And I have not given permission for any of that. I don't want any hunting on my property. I don't want people shooting guns when I don't know when they're out there and what they might be shooting or when they're shooting. I have a kid that likes to play in the woods. I don't want him to get accidentally shot by one of these people. So, I was kind of upset about this. We got the game warden involved. They were charged, with criminal trespassing. But I mean, one of the ways in which I control this is I have trail cams everywhere. So, I'm picking up deer and squirrels and foxes and coyotes and you name it, raccoons, every kind of creature. I haven't caught a Bigfoot yet on the trail cams. I don't think we'd have one around here anyway. But it's like, you'd think though that if people got really serious and if somebody was willing to put enough money into creating a research team that could bring in high level tech, go into some of these hotspots, that you think they'd be able to maybe get some information, or do you think they're still that clever at being elusive, even from a team of professionals?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. Real good when you said money.
Yeah, no one wants to put money in it.
Yeah, there's no who's going to invest, the hundreds of thousands of dollars that it takes to purchase equipment and the man hours that it takes to pay people to be on the ground doing research and stuff like that. It's just no one is gonna fund that. There have been. I know Dr. Meldrum actually a couple of years ago was trying to fund putting a blimp up in the air with thermal cameras all over it.
Right.
I don't know whatever happened to that. I know there's the Olympic Project in the Pacific Northwest. They have like 70 trail cameras all set up for the sole purpose of Bigfoot research.
Has anyone ever caught anything that looked like it might be a capture?
Nothing that's been released. They say that they have some pretty cool stuff, but they don't release it, which is another thing that kind of grinds my gears with Bigfoot research is why be so secretive?
They always keep, paranormal community is the same way.
Yeah, they are.
mean, everybody wants to keep it close to the vest because they want to be the first.
It is true.
We're all looking for the answers, though. So
well, yeah.
It should be something we share.
I mean, you would think, though, that there would be, I guess in any kind of paranormal research, whether it be Bigfoot or ghosts or whatever, you think that there would be more cooperation between groups, and it's
there
quite
should be,
the opposite.
but human ego gets in the way, and
yeah,
this is what you get.
And that's
such a shame, really.
It really is because I mean, if we could get, yeah,
because there are lots of research teams out there, but they're usually self-funded, and that can only go so far. And then you have these TV shows; you don't know whether they're actually doing stuff or not.
And see, I'm thinking the only people that would be really interested in getting, I guess, a capture or something like this would be zoologists or people that are, biologists, people that are working in these fields, these academic fields that would maybe believe in this and want to put some kind of research towards determining one way or the other. I guess setting the stage straight, saying this is, let's go out there and let's either prove or disprove that this thing exists. Because obviously too many people are seeing things out there to just dismiss it. You can't just dismiss it.
And it's all over the world.
It's all over the world. Yeah. It's pervasive across cultures.
Goes back hundreds of years.
And that's also the time factor. It's more than even just, the Loch Ness Monster. You're dealing with more than just simply that because there's a whole tourist industry for that. It's a very localized thing. It's just one sighting. It's just one creature, and they make a lot of money doing it. So, you can dismiss that one and say, well, that's really what's going on there. You can go to that. You can go to Loch Ness, come back with a Loch Ness Monster stuffed animal and everything
who
else.
doesn't want a Nessie stuffy?
Well, if I went there, I'd probably get one.
I'd get one too.
But Bigfoot's bigger than that. It's everywhere. There's sightings everywhere. There's variations of it all over the world. And while it might not be as talked about as Father Chris mentioned in Europe and Australia, you mentioned, Mike, that there's still names for it. There are still people that have found things that are like this in those locations. So it seems to me that you need to get, I mean, something that needs to happen is a university would have to get serious about it and say,
right,
let's research this and set the record straight and just go in and either prove or disprove.
Someone in the chat room did mention Mariah Mayer. She's a scientist, and she was on that. I believe it's called Expedition Bigfoot.
Okay.
Now, I watched the first couple of seasons, and I don't know how much of it is real or not, but she at least seems to be very level-headed and debunking a lot of things.
Right.
So, I mean, there are researchers out there who have the right things in mind, but they're using all kinds of technology to try to find.
But nothing
this thing.
definitive has come out of this research.
No, a lot of this, that, and the other, and also a lot of their activity ended up on federal land owned by the military, so they couldn't cross over into that land. And so I think that's where the last season ended, if I'm not mistaken.
Interesting.
So it's interesting. There's a government, there's a conspiracy that the government knows they exist and that they're. I know it sounds like Stranger Things.
Well, I mean, it sounds like aliens.
Right.
When you start getting into this stuff, it makes you wonder what they do and what they don't know. Anyway, we're going to take our first break here at the top of the hour. We're talking with Mike about Bigfoot and about his work. So don't go away. We'll be right back here in just a moment. And get your questions ready in the chat room or call into the show. We'd love to hear from you. And we'll see where the conversation goes when we come back. Don't go away.
alive. She can feel the vibe.
Welcome back, everyone, to the second part of Vestiges After Dark. We hope that you're enjoying the show so far. I know I am. We're talking with Mike Familant about Bigfoot, and we're going to get started with taking some of your questions, so make sure that you're putting them into the chat room. I'm going to get the number up on the screen shortly. I have to actually step away and handle something, but Jamie Wolf is going to continue much of this segment. I'll be back as soon as I'm done. So don't worry, I'm not leaving, but we'll be right back after this. Don't go away. Everyone, thank you for staying through the break, and we're ready here for part two. So Jamie Wolf, if you could continue the interview for me so I can step away and take care of the situation, I'll be much grateful for you.
Okay.
All right.
So, Mike, can you copy Mike?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
Okay. So equipment wise, I'm curious what you use when you go out to the field, because I know some of the better funded folks have all the bells and whistles. Even some people are using paranormal equipment now, and they're getting some results. Are you using any kind of paranormal type equipment, or are you just doing the knocks and the calls? How are you doing it?
We because we film the show, we try to bring as much equipment as we can, and we utilize as much equipment as we possibly can. So we bring out one of the best pieces of equipment that I have is a thermal imaging camera.
Of course. Yeah.
That's kind of, I don't know how I went into the woods without it beforehand. Talk about being scared and a little unnerving at night without having one of those things.
Even some of them thermal scans can scare the hell out of you, though, too.
Yeah, that's true.
Especially when you can see it on the camera, but you go to find it and it's not there. That's
right.
Heat signature.
But we have night vision cameras that we bring out to film the show. We utilize a body camera. That's a new thing that we have. Voice recorders are the best tool in our arsenal for sure, hands down. It's the best way you're going to get evidence is through voice recordings. And then we use trail cameras depending on where we go to and how long we're in a location for.
Okay, so when you use this equipment, do you review it in the field, or you wait till you get back?
No, yeah, it's normally when I get back. If I do have, because what I do is I bring my laptop in the field to upload our footage and stuff like that. So I generally don't review it until I get home. It's like, especially with the trail cameras, when I open them up, it's like a kid on Christmas every time I open
right,
up
like open up a
SD
gift.
Card.
I guess my only thing would be like I'd hate to get all the way back out of the bush and review evidence and find something. And you could have been in there to pursue it, and it's too late now. But these TV shows, I know you started your YouTube channel and your series because of how you felt about some of the shows out there. I know in the chat room we're talking about one specific show, and it is pretty compelling, but you don't know with these TV shows, they have to have a certain bit of mystery, and they have to find something to compel the audience to keep watching. What do you think of some of these newer shows that are using this technology? Do you think that it's all a bunch of bumpkiss, or do you think they're actually finding some things out there? Do you have contacts with any of these people that are out there?
No, I don't. I don't even watch the shows, to be honest with you. I like you. I've watched the first couple episodes, I think, of the Expedition Bigfoot, and I was curious about how they were in their perfect, being out in the woods, how their hair was perfect every time and stuff like that. Their makeup was on point.
Yeah, I'm thinking there may have been a hotel every night.
Yeah. So it's just that kind of stuff that really, it was the initial reason why I decided to make the own show. And I get it, it's for ratings, and every show on TV, it's a business. You have to make money.
Right.
And that's what a TV show is just a business. And to be successful, you have to get viewers. It's simple as that. So I understand the quote unquote reality-ness of the TV industry. But I figured I have this history and background of video editing. I'm going to make a show where I don't care if I don't get any views. Like it's funded totally by me. That's
part of the freedom of YouTube, and you can get a Patreon, exactly. And you don't have to worry about being pressured to find something or to embellish anything, or it's just raw and real footage. I like that aspect of it. Have you ever? I've got a question in the chat room real quick from D, and I'm curious too. I think you may have already answered it earlier, but have you ever heard the call of a Sasquatch, the scream? I mean, I've heard it on TV. I've heard recordings of it. Have you ever heard one in actuality? And did it send chills up your spine?
A really good vocalization from High Point State Park in New Jersey, actually. And it was a series of 3 howls. I've also recorded some really good howls up in the Catskill Mountains of New York. Mm-hmm. But this one piece of audio from High Point State Park was really cool because it was a sustained triple howl, which is classic Bigfoot. If you couldn't get more classic than that. And what we do is I like to vet any of my evidence before I release it anywhere. So, for example, for this piece of audio evidence, I sent it to a linguist for the military who actually does Sasquatch bioacoustics on the side. Go figure. But he's the right man for the job, and he came back with like a 2-page description and said it's because of X, Y, and Z. It's outside of human vocal range, and it's also no known animal. So it's that kind of stuff that we strive to capture and to release evidence like that.
Do you take any of the recordings into the bush with you and play them to see if you'll get a response back?
I have in the past, yeah. One thing I really like to do is it's called call blasting. Is when you take like a vocalization or something. But one of the things I really like to do, and I get really great results, is use whale calls. Actually,
really,
yeah. You have the low pitch frequency. We were talking about the low pitch before, and I guess that low whale kind of frequency gets the Bigfoot really stirred up.
See, I find that fascinating. So, what do you think is going to happen in the next few years? It's come to the forefront. Technology is really advancing. You've got more and more people interested in it going into the bush. Hopefully the right people doing the right research. Do you think that we're going to find this creature and identify it?
I think it's just a matter of time. Yeah. And like you said, the technology is getting more readily available and cheaper for people. So you don't need to get this big team of professional researchers to go out in the woods. The amateur researcher, the amateur scientist, as I like to call it, is really the boots on the ground way we research Bigfoot, really. So I think that's super important. And when it comes to, just the research aspect of it, like I said before, just to vent that evidence, and the more people that we have on the ground, the better, obviously the better chance we have and of finding something. And it's just a matter of time. It's we could already be there too. We could have this really great evidence. The government could have this really great piece of evidence that we have no idea about. I'm sure people have gotten some really good trail camera pictures of Bigfoot, stuff like that has never seen the light of day. Who knows?
Yeah, I have to wonder, being a former government employee, they do like to keep things close to the chest. So yeah. I do have suspicion that they're letting on to more than what we know, and there probably is some more evidence we'll never know about. It's the same thing with the whole giants phenomenon, where the Smithsonian had samples and skeletons back in the 20s and 30s of giant humanoid creatures, and all of a sudden they disappeared.
Yeah, where did they go to?
And the Smithsonian's like, we don't know what you're talking about. But yet there's photos and news articles that back up the claims. So I find that very interesting. How often do you get out into the bush and are able to do all these? Because aren't you still an EMT?
I don't do EMT anymore.
Okay.
I'm still certified, but ever since COVID,
stay certified, please. We need good medics.
What's that?
Stay certified, please. We need good medics.
I'm not actively participating, but I will stay certified. That's for sure.
Right.
But no, I do Bigfooting full time, which is awesome. I make my living by going around to libraries. I present at different libraries around the country, talking about Bigfoot. And from there, we do expeditions no matter where we go. So I try to get out during the winter. I'm more a fair weather squatcher, if you will. I'm not a fan of the cold. So I try to get out camping at least twice a month, and as much as I can, just night hiking or day hiking, looking for signs of Bigfoot. I know coming up in the next year in 2023 is very busy. In February, I'll be in Florida, and then March, I'll be in Georgia, April in Kentucky, and then May in North Carolina and Tennessee. So I got big tours coming up, which is awesome. I can't wait to get out to some of these areas that I've never been to.
Yeah, the Appalachians have their own stories of ancient Sasquatch type creatures. So where are you going to be in Georgia? Just because I'm in Georgia. Obviously, North Georgia somewhere.
Yeah, Georgia, I got 3 different libraries: Hall County, Rutherford County, and somewhere else. I'll get them to you for sure.
I'm familiar with Hall County.
Oh, okay, cool.
That's right. So you've been doing this now for 11 almost, 12 years or 10 years?
Yeah, I think it's
11?
going on 11 years. Yeah.
Did you ever think that you would be doing this as opposed to being in public service?
No,
Is this kind of something that happened to you? Because I feel the same way. I was a cop until 2020. Always been interested in the paranormal, cryptids. I remember being a little girl in grade school, in 4th grade, and finding a book in the library that was about the Patterson footage. And I was just enthralled by it. I had no idea. And so I became very interested. I read everything about the Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster and anything cryptid back in the day. So I've always been fascinated with that. And then the paranormal aspect, that just kind of fell in my lap. I never thought I'd be doing it. But so were you always interested in this kind of thing as a kid, or was this something you just had no interest in? I know you said you're a gamer.
Yeah, total inside kid. And I wasn't even into Bigfooting at the time. Before this first expedition, I was working at a beach resort in Sarasota. It was like the best job I ever had before in my entire life. And I was watching the Finding Bigfoot on TV. Had no interest in Bigfoot whatsoever. I was bored. It was on. So I was like, and they said at the end of it, if you want to, email us if you want to come out with us. So I was engaged at the time, and I did not tell my fiance what we were doing. So I just started I signed up, and we just started acquiring camping gear over time. And finally she was just like, "What is going on?" And I'm like, "We're going to look for Bigfoot in North Florida." And then we broke up,
probably went over
Yeah. And then I had to find somebody else to go with me.
Yeah,
so.
Dude, you got to talk to the chicks first before you.
Yeah.
We're going to do what?
Noted. Yes, noted.
Duly noted. So your partner in crime, do you still go squatching with Jimmy, or do you have a whole different group? Tell me a little bit about your group up there in Jersey and what you guys do and how to find you guys.
Yeah. Jimmy's still down in Florida. Every time I go down there, I make it a point to get together with him and we go out. Up here, I have a private Facebook group with about 30 people in it that are from all over the country, really, and mostly from, I guess, the tri-state area: New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and they're the kind of my team who I would trust every person in that group with my life type of thing. So they come out with me. Usually we have anywhere from 4 to 6 people on an expedition. And we usually go out for, 2 or 3 nights, 3, 4 nights even, and try to get some activity that way.
Do you try to keep it to 3 or 4 nights, or have you ever done a long term, 2-week
I think the
insertion?
Longer the better, to be honest.
Right, because the animals will start to get used to you, and if there are Sasquatches out there, I think that they would start to get curious, and you may have a better chance of getting some activity. I know 2 weeks is a long time to be in the bush.
It gives you time to learn the area as well.
Mm-hmm.
You learn the game trails. You learn how animals are operating. When you're there for 2 or 3 nights,
the night
it's very
sounds,
difficult to get a grasp of how animals operate. But yeah, the longer the better. But unfortunately, because most people don't do this full time, they have other commitments and stuff like that, so
right.
they have to get to work and stuff. So we normally go out on a Thursday and come back on a Sunday.
So you make a long weekend of it.
Yeah, a nice long weekend out looking for Bigfoot. Can't beat it.
So when you go out there, you have a group of 4 to 5 people, you said?
Yeah, give or take. Yep.
And does everybody have a specific job that they do while they're out there, or does everybody just kind of do a group collective and do everything at the same time, or do you split up? Do you have one person working this, one person working that? I'm just curious from a paranormal investigator aspect. We all have our niche.
Yeah, and it depends on how many people and who is there. I know there's some people that are really into audio evidence, and that's all they do is they'll have their voice recorder with their parabolic microphone and just headphones on. That's all they'll be interested in doing is audio. I have other people that operate the cameras for me, so I can talk and look cool while I'm not trying to take a selfie the entire time. Mm-hmm. And some people are really into the thermal cameras and stuff like that. But from a technical aspect, and I'm actually is going to start releasing a series about Bigfoot research protocols and stuff like that. Is you're supposed to have a scribe, you're supposed to have a team lead type of thing. obviously the camera person, audio, visual. You're supposed to kind of divvy up the tasks, so each person has
it's just like a military squad. Yeah, everybody has
Yeah.
their strong point and brings something different to the table, but it all meshes together. That's a good segue into a question I have in the chat room from Not Sure, who's a military guy. He asks, are your hunts more like a stalk and hunt, or do you cover just a small area? Would it be best to leave out food or something to see if you can get an encounter or a sign? Thank you. I know that some people leave out apples and such.
You got to be very careful doing that because depending on the state that you're in, you can't bait animals. So that's I know in New Jersey, if you put out some tasty stuff for an animal, you're going to get a nice ticket from the park rangers. So you can't do that in some states. However, it is very effective. I've done it in the past and where it is legal out in Pennsylvania and stuff like that. And it is very effective. And just like we said before, even if you don't get you see what other kind of predator animals are in the area.
Yeah, it's good to know what's out there.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. If you have a heavy bear population, you know that, which is great. Yeah. What were you saying? Sorry.
He says,
"Oh yeah,
do you do a stalk and do you use a stalk and hunt, or do you cover just a small area?"
Yeah, generally what we do is during the day we'll go out and we'll scout out an area for where we're going to go at night, and we'll look for physical evidence such as footprints, hair samples, scat, stuff like that. And at night, what we'll do is when we are trying to get a physical contact and interact with one of these creatures. So what we'll do is, generally speaking, there's different ways you can go about it. There's it's called the leapfrog technique and the hopscotch technique and stuff like that. But there's generally what we'll do is we'll go out kind of quiet as far as we want to go, and then we'll do a Bigfoot howl, and then kind of have our lights on and kind of talk and do more Bigfoot calls leading back towards camp. So in theory, that we're trying to lure a Bigfoot kind of
right back to towards camp,
so we can get a picture of it. Yeah. It's kind of like I like to tell people it's like fishing with like a fishing lure. You know, you want to try to imitate
cast and reel it in. Yeah.
Broken Bigfoot, and hopefully it attracts the attention of the other Bigfoot.
Now, one question I do have for you that I saw on a certain TV show, well, we'll just say Expedition Bigfoot. Have you seen any of the structures that they claim to have found where it has the tree limbs pushed over into almost like a teepee formation, or any of the nesting areas? Have you seen anything strange like that, or piles of bones from dead deer and whatnot? Have you ever seen anything like that you can't attribute to a bear?
I've came across in my research area here in Sparta Township in New Jersey. There's one area that has really intricate structures. The trees they're kind of like sapling trees, but they're bigger than a person wouldn't be able to maneuver one of these things.
Right. Some of the things, I've seen some of them on documentaries, and it is pretty compelling. So that's interesting that you've seen them in person. And
the one time we were hiking and there was nothing. The next time we were there, like a week later, there was a tree upside down, like buried and like with the top into the ground. So that was really strange. There was no weather or anything in between the times
that'll make your booty tight right there. Seeing that, because that takes an ungodly amount of strength if that was done by a creature. But it also leads to they're intelligent, because it definitely seems to be deliberate.
Absolutely, yeah. I think people they don't realize how intelligent Bigfoot actually are.
Right.
I don't think they're intelligent enough to make fire, but I think they're definitely intelligent enough to have conversations with each other and can communicate with each other without problem.
Yeah. Do you think they have like a family unit or a pack? What would you call it? A family unit, or have a pack mentality?
Yeah, I would call them like a family group, and I think or a family unit, and I think they have 3 to 5 or 6 individuals within a family unit. And for example, in New Jersey, I know there's 2 different family units that move around the state, and I can tell you that because of the witness descriptions. One has like a dark colored black hair, and the other has like a reddish color hair.
And see, these witnesses don't know each other, do they?
Absolutely not.
So that leads to, some validation that there's something out there.
Yeah. Actually, if you want to put some science behind the numbers, Bigfoot sightings in New Jersey increase by 80% every third year. So in, say, for example, up in northern New Jersey, the Bigfoot are up here now, I've got 11 reports this year alone where I've not gotten any from the rest of the state. So in a year and a half from now, they're going to be in South Jersey, in the complete opposite end of the state.
So they're nomadic.
They're nomadic. They follow the food. Absolutely.
Right.
Yep. I believe that's 100% correct.
How long do you think, Mike, it will be before one is captured? Do you think it's inevitable, or do you think they will just elude us forever?
No, I think it's definitely, we were just kind of talking about this. I think it's going to be within years. I don't think it's going to be tens of years. I think it's
so you think we're getting close? You think we're getting close to this?
Yeah. I think with the availability with technology, and we were talking kind of like amateur scientists and amateur researchers before, just with the amount of people putting time into this research. There seems
to be a pattern developing. So you got people putting their heads together. So you've got a pattern of activity. They're nomadic, family unit, descriptions from different witnesses that don't know each other. So all the pieces of the puzzle are starting to come together. So I think it is just a matter of time until the eureka moment happens.
Absolutely. And then that's how I commonly describe it to people. It's different puzzle pieces coming together. And like we said in the beginning of the program, if everybody were to share their puzzle pieces, how awesome would that be?
Yeah, but nobody wants to share.
We're not there yet. Everybody wants to do their own puzzle.
It's the same problem in the paranormal.
It's
the same thing. We have these it's just very divisive, and one group hates one group over another group, and no one wants to cooperate, no one wants to collaborate. They ostracize you if you're associated with certain people. It's ridiculous what we see, and that what it does is it discredits, I think, the entire industry when people act like that. It discredits the entire field of study, because what it does is it just looks amateurish and unprofessional, and it just looks like it's made up of people who are amateurish and unprofessional, because professionals don't act like that, and science doesn't work like that. Science is all about collaboration. It's all about the greatest and brilliant minds coming together to find the truth. That's what it comes down to, without personal bias getting in the way. Although I have to say, these days, I'm not even sure science is immune to it, but it should be. I mean, it should be, if it wants to be the objective discipline that it claims to be. I think it needs to be that way. I just want to tell the audience, I apologize for having to step away, and I'm going to have to apologize even more, because I'm going to have to cut the show short tonight. We're going to have to end it at the top of this hour. So we're just doing 2 hours tonight. I have to take care of a situation. And so I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of that, everyone. So if you have a question, I had to disconnect the phones because I needed to use my phone. So we're just going to take your questions in the chat right now. Do we have any questions coming in that maybe we haven't been able to get to yet?
We have one related to Sasquatch from Danielle.
Okay.
I want to make sure we can also get Mike's, how we get a hold of Mike and his social media and all that.
Oh yeah, we'll do that definitely at the end of the show.
Danielle has a question. Are elementals known to have any particular smell associated with them, like sulfur, unpleasant smells, like as with demons? There are those that think that Sasquatch could be an elemental just because of the disappearing act they seem to be able to do.
Well, I mean, I know from just the vantage point of having worked with elementals, okay, having encountered elementals in my own work, that they can produce scents, usually high energetic ones, excuse me, tend to be more pleasant, perfumey odors kind of thing. And the lower vibratory elementals tend to be the more reprehensible smells. Excrement, is a big one, that you will sometimes smell around the presence of some of these lower level elementals. Sometimes the sulfur is associated with demons. And then, there's also, just just overall just a bad odor. Rotten flesh is another one. And that's something we look for actually when we're looking for darker or malevolent entities. Doesn't necessarily mean it's a fallen angel, but it's something that can sometimes be produced in their presence. But there's no like set smell that says, you know, this particular elemental smells like that. It can just be like there's vibration. Everything is vibration. So odor is a type of vibration as well that our olfactory senses are tuned into and can translate that into something.
So it makes sense that these Sasquatch emit a lower vibrational vocalization. I know that they're known to have an unpleasant smell, like a wet, dirty dog.
Well, that's what I was going to ask
right,
Mike. It's like, have you had any kind of smells associated with the Sasquatch?
No, I've never smelled one. I think I've been pretty close to him. Like I was saying in Whitehall, New York, I was pretty close, surrounded by him, but it didn't smell at all. The only smell that I've smelled is in Florida. There was this property called the Bridges property, Mr. and Mrs. Bridges, and they have a gardening, I forget what it's greenhouse, and a glove, one of their gardening gloves, went missing for like 2 years. And they found it on a trail that they are on every day. And they found it just like 2 years later, and they said that a Bigfoot took it. And the smell that it produced was like a wet dog, kind of skunky urine. It was just
kind of like a dog that's been lost in the swamp for a few days.
Yeah.
Real nasty odor.
And if that's what people say, Bigfoot smell like, then that's why they call him the skunk ape for sure.
Right.
I understand that one. Yeah.
Definitely.
Grassman's supposed to have the same kind of odor.
But I mean, that's that would be, I think, attributable to natural. Biological things,
lack of
hormones,
hygiene.
lack of hygiene, maybe even a type of pheromone that we can pick up on in some degree that has some kind of smell that's detectable.
Yeah, that might be a good smell to a Bigfoot.
Well, it might be. I mean, I know that
it might be a mating
body odor, which most human beings today
Pheromones.
tend to associate as a negative. Most people do not like the smell of someone else's body odor. We have deodorant products and everything else to mask this. But back before, we were more civilized, I guess, as a society, as a civilization, body odor was thought to be by some of these evolutionary psychologists as an erotic type of odor that could attract mates, which is why we produce when we don't clean thoroughly, or even if we are cleaning thoroughly but been working out in the hot sun all day, we come back smelly. Even the cleanest person will come back smelly after that. It was supposed to be potentially an attractant.
So, Mike, what you can do is not bathe for about a week or two, and then go out in the bush and see if you attract any.
I don't like to admit it, but that's been done before.
Has it been done? Okay.
I've done that before.
Do you find that you have more activity when you do that?
No.
They probably sleep further apart in the tents, though. Imagine base camp grows a little bigger since they want to.
Well, they can probably tell you're not one of them.
Right.
Funny story about that is actually we were hiking in Whitehall, New York, and I was hiking with two twins, and I was behind them. It was like 120 degrees out, nighttime hike, and it was buggy. So I put on like off, right?
Yeah.
And they say they got their own stuff that they're going to put on later. So I'm walking behind them, and they're spraying this stuff, and it's getting in my mouth and my eyes and stuff. And it's nasty. And I'm like, after the hike, I was like, guys, what kind of bug spray did you spray on yourself? And they're like, well, it wasn't bug spray. It was deer urine.
Yeah.
So they were trying to cover up their scent.
Oh my goodness.
That was the time I got deer urine.
Wow. Yeah. That is a foul odor. I've smelled it before. It's not that great.
Doesn't taste that good either.
I'd imagine not.
I can't even imagine, dude. Oh my gosh.
That's only second to the time I bear maced myself.
Oh no.
I mean, I've got stories of me using pepper spray in the field, trying to spray a bad guy, and the wind would shift at the wrong moment, and the cops would end up, we'd be calling you guys to come out with some saline to wash our eyes out with.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh my goodness.
Do we have any other questions from the chat?
We've got one. I don't know. It's kind of a hard question to answer. I not sure. Has a question. Do the Bigfoots understand thought as we do, and what will religion say about that?
Well, I mean, I don't know if anyone can really answer that with any
No,
kind of
I mean, it's an
accuracy.
interesting, it's an
That's
interesting
tough. That's a tough
thing. We do know that they have some form of intelligence, but I don't think it's going to be to the level that we have. I
think in terms of religion, I mean, I think we've kind of already answered that in the sense that if it is truly I think we can say regardless of whether or not it's another unidentified species, completely biological and tangible.
I'm sure they're very protective of their own. I'm
Yeah.
sure that they care about their own. But I don't think that they have the intelligence that we have as far as critical
Right.
thinking skills.
But we could say that they are part of creation,
course.
and so they're an animal, just one of the members of the animal kingdom, which we are too. I mean, we're one of the members of the animal kingdom. We just kind of our intellect put us at the top of the food chain and pretty much every other chain because of it. But that only applies to this planet. As far as I'm concerned, there could be even more spectacular forms of intelligent life out there in the universe that we can't even fathom, and it's just in places that we can't get to. Too inaccessible. Most of the cosmos is inaccessible, so we'll never really know the answer to that. But I wouldn't think that religion would have any problem with the existence of a Sasquatch, because it would just be, at the very least, another member of the animal kingdom that's been identified. And that's what it sounds like from Mike's perspective, our guest tonight. His contention is that it is a biological creature. So,
Ideally, that is the mainstream thought on it, which makes sense.
Yeah.
The more information they find out, the more evidence they get.
Yeah.
It does point to just an undiscovered species. But there's always going to be that paranormal segue, hey, what about this?
And I think it comes back to, again, not to sound like a broken record, but it comes back to the fact that it's kind of hard to accept that in this world,
there could be something that's that remarkable.
Correct.
Well,
and and so close to us, because it's one thing to say that, there might be some crazy species all the way at the bottom of the ocean,
Right.
because that's so inaccessible. Might as well be outer space for all we're concerned, because it's so outside of our environment. But I mean, you're talking about creatures that are basically just living in our next door, and they're just out there in the woods, and kind of available in places where we can stay and interact with these things. And so it's kind of hard to accept that, because look at National Geographic. When I was a kid, I always thought National Geographic was like the best magazine. It's not that great anymore, but when I was a kid, it was pretty damn cool. Yeah, in the 70s and the 60s, 70s, and 80s were when it was at its peak. But when you look at the really old ones, I used to have every copy. They were getting too heavy to carry around, and I was moving a lot, so I just eventually just gave them away or threw them away, because they were just, I had every one from the very beginning. And when you look at the really old ones, going back to the 40s and 50s and 60s, you find that, they were stories about this new tribe that was just encountered, and this new civilization that was in some remote part of the Amazon, or that they didn't know existed. And then after like the 80s, the mid 80s, you stopped seeing those stories. And then by the 90s and 2000s and up to the current time, now it's like every National Geographic's about climate change or something. They're not talking about anthropology anymore. And I think it's because they're not finding anything new. And so I think, again, it's like, now that we've populated the planet, you have tribes that have cell phones now. That was not a thing.
I'm not sure that was such a good idea.
No, it's not a good idea. But I mean, it's just
let them alone.
It changes. I mean, interaction causes change, and so it's hard, I think, for the modern man to sort of wrap his head around the idea that there's this massive unknown species living right next to us, and we have not encountered them.
Remember the giant squid, the kraken? That was mythos till just a couple of 100 years ago.
Yeah,
and it was discovered to be real.
It was, yeah. But see, again, that's ocean.
True.
So you can say that these are not places we can just hang out.
we can go to we'll go to the Republic of Congo, right? And let's just go for like 10 years ago, 2000, I think it was 2009 it was.
Yeah.
They discovered a new primate. It's called the Lasula. And that was just in 2009. It took them actually 5 years to classify the animal. They had a picture of it, a clear
13
picture.
years ago. Yeah.
So
And,
this would be
they
one of
took
the,
them
and I think what you said at the beginning of the show probably is the nail on the head. And I think the real answer, or the key to the matrix of answering this mystery, is that there's so few of them that there's just not enough number for us to interact with. You know, it's not like tribes where, you know, you have large groups living in one particular geographic location. You're talking like handfuls in pockets of the world. And it sounds like it might be a very diminished number of them.
If they are nomadic, that makes sense. Plus, you know, could they be a missing link, so to speak, of could they be in our evolutionary chain?
It could be.
And just something happened where a few of them survived.
Like a vestigial species.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think that would be definitely something that we would need to look at, because, I mean, evolution has not really done a good job of explaining how we as Homo sapien evolved so quickly from, you know, the more.
They've explained it. It was aliens. It was the Anunnaki.
I mean, I guess
It's a different show.
But see, I mean, you have to almost go to that wild and crazy extent to explain it, because normal evolution, we should not be as evolved as we are now. And I mean, we're like, I think if I remember correctly, we share 97% of the same DNA as a chimpanzee.
It's close. Yeah. It's
It's only like 2 or 3%. That is what makes us different. And so where did that 2 to 3% come from? How did that 2 to 3% evolve so quickly? Even evolutionary scientists cannot explain that well. Now, it's not true what the creationists say, where there's like no evidence of transitional species. We are the transitional species. We're currently in a state of transition. We have an appendix. That's a vestigial structure. We have wisdom teeth. Those are vestigial structures. All embryos start out with tails. You know, you had a tail at one time. In fact, some babies are actually born with a tail. They have to have them removed. It's rare, but it can happen. Again, it's a carryover. And when you look at some of these, like at the developmental stages of mammals, you can't really even tell the difference between them. You couldn't tell the difference between a human and any other mammal at certain stages, because there's such similarities there. So it's very clear, you know, that we evolved, you know, over time from more primitive forms of primate. What's not clear is how we did it so quickly. Now, some have speculated it's the consumption of meat. Bringing high protein into the diet caused our brains to radically transform, and that's where the intellect came from, and the intellect changed our behaviors, and that would have potentially, this is just theory though, created an expeditious transition from lower primate to what we are now, but it doesn't completely explain the missing link. So maybe you're right. Maybe Bigfoot is the missing link that we're all been waiting for, all been looking for. You know, I don't know. What do you think, Mike? I mean, do you think do you think they are, that we're related to them? Are they our ancestors? Are they a more primitive form of ourselves? Is it a part of maybe our earlier ancestors that did not go extinct, that we kind of broke off, sort of like Neanderthal, you know, how we broke off at a point?
That's exactly what I think. I think they are definitely an early form of humans, and their evolutionary pathway just didn't mesh with ours, and they kind of took their own way, and branch. We took our own way, and you know, it's you know, people say that you know, they couldn't live through the ice age and stuff like that, but we did. Other animals did.
Right, they're covered with thick fur.
Well, but even then, I mean, there's this guy I've talked about in the show before. I forget his name, but he's called the Iceman.
He's Swedish or Norwegian.
I don't remember. He might even not be alive anymore. I don't know. I think he is, though.
No, he's around.
But he climbed Mount Everest in just shorts, no shoes, nothing. He just had a pair of shorts on, no shirt. And he climbed, and he almost made it. And he had to stop, unfortunately. And it wasn't because of the cold. It was because he actually sprained his ankle. And he couldn't make it any further. But no frostbite. and he's able to go through extreme temperatures with just his skin, and to prove that somehow, if we know how to access these special features of our biology, we can actually do things that normally we would think is impossible. Because, I don't know about you, but if I started walking through the snow, I'd probably be frostbitten in about 20 minutes.
Well, a lot of people are getting into cold therapy where it does desensitize your body to the cold.
Yeah.
And so they'll do a hard workout and then immerse in a tub of ice.
And maybe,
then each day they progressively stay longer, and it basically toughens you up against the elements. So it makes sense. These creatures are living in the elements.
Well, that's it. We
found no real, structures other than with some of these nests, and I believe they're living in caves, to be honest. But it makes sense they'd be able to adapt to the environment very well, especially being covered in hair.
It would make sense. And I don't know, but I do find it fascinating, and I do, I do wonder what these things are, and I'm fascinated by your work, Mike. I would love to have you back on the show next season and continue this conversation if you'd be up for it.
Update us on your adventures,
Absolutely.
man.
Yeah,
for sure. Definitely. Yeah.
Before we close out tonight, I'd like to give you a chance to kind of just tell the audience how they can, again, remind them how they can find you and all of the things that you're doing with your YouTube show and all of that.
Yeah. We have a brand spanking new website, shadowofredeye.com. You can find everything on there. Our Instagram is Shadow of Red Eye. Like we said at the beginning of the show, top of the show, and our Facebook is In the Shadow of Big Red Eye, but our bread and butter is definitely our YouTube channel, and that is not In the Shadow of Red Eye. That is called Sussex County Bigfoot.
Sussex County.
So you want to check that out, yeah, for sure. And every subscribe button, it definitely helps me. So if you could subscribe, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, we know
Absolutely.
the feeling.
We know the feeling. Definitely subscribe. People like to watch, but they don't necessarily. The numbers don't match the number of subscribers. It makes, it gets very frustrating after a while when you do YouTube shows. But I want to thank you so much. This has been such a fascinating thing, and I wish I didn't have this other issue because I would love to talk to you for another hour. But next time we'll do this again.
Next time, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so
All right,
much.
Mike, appreciate you. Be safe out there. Okay.
Yeah. Take care. Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Thank you. And I want to thank all of you tonight. I do apologize for having to close up so quickly. I know that I've never really had to do this, but sometimes
I think it's important.
Duty calls. Yeah.
All right.
Anyway, we'll be back next week on Tuesday with Father Firth. Father.
That's going to be awesome.
It is. He's going to be talking with us about relationships and theology. You know him from the chat room. He's come on quite a bit. He's even called into the show several times and given his input. Very knowledgeable man. And excellent to talk to him about theology and biblical subjects. So you don't want to miss that. That's next week, Tuesday at 8 p.m. But until then, I'll see you out there in the ether. Goodbye, everybody.
Take care, everybody. Bye.